What is a hacked client and how do I use it? A hacked client is a modified Minecraft client that introduces additional game-changing functionality into the game. Some are geared more toward PvP combat, but I focus on ones that allow me to build and explore on my own servers and on servers like 2B2T. So today I'm going to focus on Wurst. It was released in 2014. It keeps updates with every Minecraft update, even snapshots. It's also fully open source, which is rare for a hacked client. And if you don't know what open source means, instead of receiving an already built version of the software where you can't really see what's going on under the hood, with Wurst and other open source software, you have access to the original files used to build the software. This allows the end user to customize and audit their own installations if they choose to. It's also a big plus in the security realm because you know you're not downloading malware or backdoors. So in my opinion, Wurst's UI is a little rough compared to other clients. Some of them focus on a nice, clean, optimized look. But to me, that's the biggest downside of Wurst. It's about the only one. For some people, Wurst might not be geared enough towards the PvP meta, like Sigma or Rusher Hack. And there is one more downside. Although Wurst can be used with Baritone, which is an AI pathfinding bot, it doesn't ship with Baritone like Meteor does. Wurst pathfinding AI is not very sophisticated. It basically just holds down your forward walk button without navigating to a particular coordinate or without actually pathfinding over obstacles or under obstacles. But it does have a ton of other features to boast. I'll be looking at the version of Wurst which works with Minecraft 1.20.1. That's the version I run my servers on due to its modding stability and mod availability. Wurst is installed just like a mod. Some hacked clients install their own loader, meaning it would show up in your Minecraft launcher dropdown. When you're running Wurst, though, what you want to see in this spot is Fabric. Fabric is one of several frameworks that allow you to mod Minecraft Java Edition. You'll also need to drop in the Wurst jar for your version of Minecraft. And you'll also need to install Fabric, and that includes dropping the Fabric API into your mods folder. Super easy. So I'll be approaching this from the standpoint of somebody who is playing on an anarchy server, or at least a server where hacking is allowed. In pretty much every survival server, using a hacked client would be considered cheating. Not cool. The only thing left is to load Minecraft with the Fabric loader. Down in the bottom left corner, when we open Minecraft, you can confirm that Fabric is installed correctly. So here we are inside of Minecraft 1.21, 1.20.1. You can see Fabric down here in the bottom left corner, so we know that things are installed correctly. And if you also have a mods menu installed, you can go here and check and make sure that Wurst is running. So it looks like it is. We're all set. So we're going to go into a random Minecraft world here. I'm not going to change anything. Okay, so let me disable my shaders here. And I am using Biomes Aplenty right now, so you can see there's some new stuff that normally wouldn't be here. That's okay. But yeah, this isn't exactly a vanilla Minecraft world. But it essentially is. It's just got the extra biomes and stuff. So now that we're here in our world, we can hit right shift, and that brings up the navigator. So this entire list of modules that you're looking at here is called the navigator, and this is the most reliable way to toggle things on and off. Each one of these is a hack, and as you get down to the bottom, you'll see some of them begin with a dot, and so those aren't hacks, those are actually commands, which means that you would type those in down here the same way that you would if you were typing to other players. But that's more for advanced use. What we're going to want to do is drop into each one of these up here that don't begin with a dot. So for each one of these, let's say flight for instance, we can hit the arrow and it will bring up the configuration menu. So all of these parameters are values that we can set to affect what that particular hack does. So I'm going to talk about my 4 hacks that I use more than anything else, because I think those are the ones to focus on. There is a ton of stuff in here, but if you don't know what 80% of it does, but you do know the 4 essential ones, you're basically 80% ahead. So first I'm going to talk about the essentials, and then I'm going to talk about the lesser known ones at the end. The 4 that I use all the time are called Fulbright, and by the way, you can just start typing once the navigator is pulled up. So again, right shift and then Fulbright. This is a good one. Free cam, flight, and ESP, which is a group of hacks, but they're all pretty similar. And by the way, as I enable and disable these, they'll normally show up on the left hand side here. I have it customized so that it shows up on the right hand side. You can do this just by going into hack list and choosing position left or position right. There's also reverse sorting. You can turn on rainbow UI and it'll cycle between colors of the rainbow on all kinds of elements of the client. So like up here in the left, up here in the right. So the very first one that I want to talk about is Fulbright, and basically what Fulbright does is it will ignore any of the lighting calculations that are supposed to happen. So here we are in a really dark room, a really dark hallway, right? And if we go into the navigator and we write Fulbright, and then we turn it on, you can see it's almost like everything is lit the same way. So we could be mining for hours and hours and not use a single torch because we're actually just using Fulbright. So that's pretty legit. It's worth noting that this won't show up for anybody else. Most of these hacks are client-side only, which means that it doesn't affect what anybody else sees, it just affects what you see on your side. So inside of Fulbright, as an example, if we want to bind something to a key inside of the navigator, inside of the configuration menu, we hit the plus button and then we can choose. So I'm going to choose toggle Fulbright, and I want that to be bound to L for light. Now, a lot of the times you'll need to go into your controls and it might conflict with something else that already exists. So I happen to know that L is usually the vanilla keybind for advancements. So once I turn that off, now I can use L reliably to toggle it on and off. And that's pretty cool. The only other thing to point out about Fulbright is that if you are using shaders, you're going to want to use night vision because gamma won't affect the light level at all. So gamma or night vision if you're not using shaders, but if you are using shaders, you're going to want to use night vision. So in addition to this being something that only you can see, it's also not going to affect any of the game's mechanics. So for instance, it looks fully lit in here, but mobs can still spawn. It doesn't affect anything like that. It basically just makes it look like it's fully lit. So as a player on 2B2T, Fulbright is my #1 hack because, you know, when there's players who are building an obsidian roof over the entirety of spawn in order to make it more difficult for new players to actually join and enjoy being on the server, they're basically casting that whole area, thousands and thousands of blocks, in darkness, which means mobs spawning everywhere, and more importantly, you just can't see where you're going, and you can't use torches because there's no coal anywhere, there's no wood anywhere, so you're going to need Fulbright, and that's why I put it at the top of my list. Next is FreeCam, and FreeCam is my second favorite because it gives you eyes everywhere within your render distance. Now I have Distant Horizons mod on right now, so normally you would not be able to see this far, but you can see all the stuff that Minecraft is rendering in for me. I could fly over here and view this area. I could fly over here and view this area. So it gives you eyes everywhere. And I put that one on C for camera. It's also worth noting in Wurst, you can not just keybind toggling things on and off, you can also keybind any of these. So for instance, increase FreeCam speed, we could put that on page up. So now that the camera speed inside of FreeCam is bound to page up, I can use C to toggle FreeCam, and then I can use page up to increase the speed, or I could also keybind page down and have some more control over it. It's hard to overstate just how game-changing FreeCam is until you use it for yourself in your Minecraft workflow. For instance, if you had some crops planted over here and you're curious how far along they are, you could use FreeCam to pop over here really quick. If you were mining in the Nether, you could use it to check for lava pockets. Or if you are building something, you can use FreeCam to make sure elements of your build are lining up. So instead of flying over here, you can use FreeCam, just pop over, and you can also go backwards and say, okay, well the hallway will wind up right about here if we just keep building in this direction. So it's much easier to brainstorm this stuff if you've got FreeCam rather than needing to physically move your body there. Another thing that I really like about FreeCam is normally if you're using something like Lightmatica or Axiom, you would need to, or you would think that you would need to go over to that area, walk over to it, and make your selections. Okay, so now this box is selected using Lightmatica. But what you can actually do is go into FreeCam and do it this way. So we could select this entire box without actually needing to emerge from underground and go grab that point. We can go into FreeCam. We could also go down and set our point right here. So now this entire box is highlighted, and we didn't have to physically go there. We could just use FreeCam and basically interact with the world as a spectator. One more nice thing about FreeCam, this is more for survival purposes, but say you're on 2v2t, right, and unfortunately players have made a wall of lava that is going to be pretty difficult to get through, right? Something you can use FreeCam for is building inside of this. So as long as you can reach that, I could stand over here and, you know, put just a block right there, and then I can go into FreeCam and look inside this and place this block, right? So I'm building inside a wall of lava because of FreeCam. I'm dying from lava. So FreeCam can be really helpful in survival situations as well, where it actually serves like a utility purpose. You just have to remember that you need to be within reach of the place where you're trying to place that block. But that's the only stipulation. So after FreeCam, the Next hack that I use most often is called flight. The reason that I like flight over creative flight, even if I'm in a creative world, is because a lot of times it's annoying to me when you stop moving and your body keeps moving after you've released the key. So for me, flight is a lot cleaner because I can move up and it stops my body. I can move over, it stops my body. There's no ramping effect. You'll also need to use no fall for flight because you do. It's just a quirk. One thing that you can use flight for also is traversing really quickly. So if you combine it with timer, you can move really fast. That's only at 4.2 out of 20. So if I set this to 17, for instance, you're going to need to use flight if you want to traverse a world this quickly, because you're going to get caught on all kinds of things along the way. Flight is also the hack that's most likely to get you kicked from a server. So if you're flying around doing this kind of thing in a survival world, the server's going to know, it's going to kick you, and you might even be banned if you get kicked too many times for basically breaking the speed limit. It literally says so-and-so moved too fast, and then it kicks you out of the world. So my last essential hack is basically a group of hacks that all fall under ESPs, and I'm going to touch on them as a group since they all serve a similar function just with different entities. So currently there's, I think, 9 different ESPs, and their function is to alert you to the presence of whichever entity that hack is tracking. For instance, the first one's called Mob ESP, and when enabled, it will render an additional element on the screen that corresponds to mobs in your render distance. So, for instance, on this creeper, you can see he's got a hitbox around him, and every other mob in the world also has a hitbox around them. If we go to Mob ESP, you can see right inside of style that we could change this to lines instead. This is pretty helpful. For Mob ESP, this is pretty cluttered. It makes it difficult to do anything really, but if you're looking for like an ender chest, for instance, this might be really helpful if it draws a line from you to the only ender chest within your render distance, for instance. Or with players, if you are playing on 2b2t and you want to know the instant another player is near you, having the tracers or the lines like this can be helpful as well. So this one is pretty helpful, except you're probably going to want to filter certain things. So say you don't want it to show you where every single cow is. You know, in a vanilla Minecraft world, that might be not very helpful. But if you're playing on 2b2t, where cows might be pretty scarce, then that could be helpful. So a lot of these just are based on the use case. When using hacked clients in general, you just got to be careful about how much real estate certain things are taking up on your screen, because you can introduce those hacks that I just showed are the ones that I'd use on a typical day in 2B2T or on a server of my own like this. But here are some more honorable mentions before we go into the full breakdown. So I really like timer, which basically changes the speed of almost everything. Essentially, timer is just a fast forward button, so as I turn it on, everything happens much quicker. Next is zoom, and zoom you can bind to something helpful. Z, sometimes I'll use. F4 is what I have been using lately, since it's right next to F5, which changes my view. And then there's X-ray is another good one. So once you turn that on, it will show you. I've got diamond ore targeted right now. Anti-hunger is a good one. Once you enable that, your saturation and your hunger, both of your hunger bars, will deplete more slowly. So that's really helpful, like on 2B2T, where you might need to be running and jumping for quite a while before you actually find any kind of food source. Anti-water push is a really helpful one. So if I head over here, and typically if I was standing here, the water would be influencing where I actually am. It would want me to push. It would want to push me to a dry area. But with anti-water push, this can be really helpful for like building, you know, near a waterfall, for instance. So I am not being affected at all by the flow of the water. Super helpful. Auto eat is another good one. So if I have some kind of food source in my hotbar here, like a cooked chicken, and I'll go into survival here. If my saturation and my hunger down here gets to a certain point, it will automatically make me eat that food. So that's pretty helpful. The one spot where that's not helpful is if you're trying to fight something and it's trying to eat at the same time. Or another place where that's not helpful is if you happen to have rotten flesh in your hotbar. Auto eat will count that as food a lot of times. So sometimes that's necessary if you really don't have any food and you're about to starve. Rotten flesh can do in a pinch, but it might be good to go into auto eat, and you want to make sure that this is unchecked, allow poison effect or something like that. The criticals hack will just make sure that all of your hits are criticals. Pretty helpful there. So if you're in Java, you can go to your options and then go to accessibility and show subtitles, and this also shows you every time you make a critical hit. Strong attack down there. So once you've got criticals turned on, it'll always be a strong attack. Auto mine is a good one. This one will basically just mine wherever you're looking at, and if you're in survival, you have the same constraints as being in survival, so it goes about as fast as using your hand. But this can be good in like creative mode. When you have auto mine on, you can basically just look anywhere and it'll break. So this is good for doing really heavy-handed stuff. This one works really well with auto tool as well. And what auto tool does is it will automatically pick the best item for whatever you're trying to break. If you're looking at sand, it'll choose the shovel for you, and then the moment you go over here and you're like, oh, I need to break this down, since we've got auto tool on, it picks the axe. So that's super helpful. This is also a good one to pair with fast break and fast place. Fast break doesn't do a whole lot in survival mode, but fast place, on the other hand, still works well in survival, even if the server has a hard time keeping up. So if you want to use excavator, which would be good for bigger projects and specifically cube-shaped projects where you need to mine out a cube-shaped area, you would type .excavate, and then we're going to type in the coordinates where we're standing right here, just for simplicity, minus 103, 63, 116. And it's going to throw an error because we're supposed to have two different coordinates, but I submitted that so that I can go back in my history, and now I already have that saved there. So I can just go ahead and fill in the second argument, which is minus 118, 60, 135. So you can see from my point of view and also from Dart's point of view that the boxes or the blocks that are inside of the area that I typed, I am not doing anything. My hands are not on the keyboard, not on the mouse, and it is mining all this out for me. And I am in survival mode right now. If I go into creative, you can see it's much faster. So excavator can be good for like if you're playing on a survival server and you need to look legit. Excavator can be good for that. But if you are doing something big, you're likely not going to want excavator. You're going to probably want one of the nukers. So there's nuker legit, nuker, and speed nuker. I'm just going to focus on nuker because these other two are just modifications of that. Speed nuker is made to be extra fast, but is especially suspicious on multiplayer survival worlds. Nuker legit, I believe, is more for actually looking like you're legit doing it in a survival world. And the nuker is just the base module. So the first thing that I do with nuker is I go in and I trigger or I toggle flat mode here, because what nuker is going to do when I turn it on is it's going to indiscriminately destroy every block around me within a certain range. And this can be modified here. The range could be just 1 block away from you, or it could be 6 blocks away from you. So this can be really destructive. It's good to know that before you turn it on. And if you don't turn on flat mode first, you'll fall through the world. Okay? So with flat mode on, and I'm going to bump up the range so that it's obvious what's happening here. So now that I'm in third person here, I like to put nuker on my numpad minus so that it's very far away from my hand most of the time, and so that it's really obvious, you know, that I'm going to be deleting things. That's why I put it on the minus. So as I turn it on, you can see it immediately breaks everything that is within whatever it was, 5 or 6 blocks of me. So this is awesome for leveling areas. Now if you own the server that you're doing this stuff on, you can change the server properties to allow this stuff to happen more. My server currently is not very happy with me for trying to modify block states so quickly, so that I don't have to mess with any of the technical side of modifying the server. I'm going to lower this just so it's not trying to modify too many blocks at once. So now you can see we're making a hallway. I'm going to turn Fulbright on, and I'm not really doing anything besides walking forward. I could even turn on auto walk, and now I'm completely hands off. My hand is not on the keyboard, not on the mouse. And you can see this is the big problem with this, is that it's very indiscriminate. So it just walked me into a pool of lava. So as with all of these hacks, you want to be really careful, and you don't want to be messing around with this in an environment that's important to you, right? So I'm going to turn auto walk off. I'm going to turn nuker off. And we'll head back to this pool of lava to show you another one of my favorites, which is called safe walk. And I put that on F. And what safe walk does is it will not allow you to walk off the edge. So that's pretty cool. This is good in the nether, it's good in the end, it's good with big builds if you're in survival mode particularly. Another good one that I really like is called camera no clip. And to show what camera no clip does, I should show you first what happens when it's not on. So my favorite place to demonstrate this is in a forest, because this is where this happens all the time. So you'll notice when I try to turn my camera, it automatically snaps to the face of the closest thing behind me, right? So sudden changes, but this is a good quality of life thing, because you want typically to be visible all the time to your own camera, right? You always want to be able to see yourself. And this happens with the ground too. So as I go down, it keeps the camera above the ground, because if it stayed at the same distance, we would clip through the ground here. But when we turn on camera no clip, what happens is the camera distance remains the same all the time. So we can move through trees. We can look upwards, and our camera will be in the ground. This can also be a good quality of life thing. Like, we're removing a quality of life facet for a different kind of quality of life facet. Like, I prefer this. I prefer my camera not to be jumping all around. But for other people, you know, the reason Minecraft natively doesn't do this is, you can see, when my camera is inside the tree, it's showing me all of the obfuscated blocks, right? And it looks not very good. So that's why you would want to use this thing. It's just a aesthetic preference kind of thing. So the next hack is called follow, and it does exactly what it sounds like. I'm gonna hit follow. There we go. Now wherever Dart goes, here I am right behind him. Are you annoyed yet?
I'm scared. Not annoyed.
And you'll see that it updates his location. So even though I got stuck there for a second, once I figured that out, we're back on track. So pretty cool. I like follow, but I mainly like it for annoying people. The next one is something I've talked about for just a second. It's auto walk, and it's basically just this. It doesn't do anything to get you out of the water. It doesn't do anything to avoid water or lava or obstacles. It doesn't do anything to hop up over blocks. So it's pretty simple. The auto walk from Wurst is pretty simple. But I did want to show what an actual robust pathfinding hack looks like. So if I go into my mods folder, and I am going to just quickly disable everything except I'm going to keep the Meteor client, which means I also need to hold on to the Fabric API. We can see in the top right, we know Meteor client is installed correctly right here. So now that I'm in the server, I am using Meteor client right now rather than Wurst client. So this is what the UI looks like. You can see it is particularly cleaner than Wurst. You also have the option to drag this stuff around, but I'm not going to talk about Meteor. What I want to talk about is Baritone, which is included functionality in Meteor that is a separate piece of software, but Meteor will actually ship with it and Wurst does not. This is the one reason I would not suggest using Wurst. With Baritone, I'm going to do pound goal 0, 120, 0. And that's just going to take me to y equals 120 at the world origin. So now it has a goal, and then I can do pound path. And then you can see it actually renders in a line that shows me where it intends to go, and you can see it's also thinking about where to go. And it's deciding whether that path is the best path. And if we just let this go, it's pretty slow because we don't have any swim hacks, we don't have anything on that is supposed to aid with the parts that are not just walking on solid ground. But if we just let it go, it's going to take us all the way to that point without us having to do anything. And this is huge because like on 2B2T, if you're trying to go to 120,000, 60,000, having a robust auto walk like Baritone is going to be a lot better than a simple auto walk like the one in Wurst. So those are all the hacks that are basically my favorites. Those are the ones that I use most often and are most familiar with. And I want to hit some of the lesser known hacks, but before I get into that, I want to talk about some of the other functionality that Wurst provides, because it's not just this hack list and the commands. It will also include certain functionality, like when you open up a storage interface, you'll see a steal button and a store button. So the steal button would remove everything from this chest and throw it into your inventory, and the store will put stuff in the chest, whatever storage you're looking at. So this is really helpful, like if you have, for instance, 6 stacks of sand and 9 stacks of dirt and all kinds of mob drops, and you really just want to go up to your chest at home and just throw almost everything in. So you can store everything and then just say, okay, well, I really just need this stuff back. Boom. It's as simple as that. So that's huge. I really like that one. I use it all the time. The next thing, I briefly mentioned this, is you can access the hack list, which is this functionality up here. It's basically just an array of your enabled hacks, and it'll show it to you in a specific spot. In addition to the full-blown navigator here, which actually is pretty verbose about everything, there is also a more bare bones version called the tab GUI, which is basically just a small version of the navigator, where instead of using your mouse to find what you're looking for, what happens is this dialog pops up in the top left, and it's got all of the hacks categorized by a certain type, and then you can go in and quickly enable and disable certain hacks. I can imagine that that's really useful. It's not something that I've ever used. If I tend to use something a lot, I just bind it to a key. Outside of a Minecraft world, you can see all of these extra options down here in the multiplayer menu. So we've got the usual add server, refresh, etc. But what we can also see is a server finder. I won't show how to use it necessarily, but essentially what server finder is for griefers specifically, to be able to automate the process of finding vulnerable servers that don't use a password and that don't use a whitelist, and it allows you, it makes them show up in your server list, and you can just pick any random one, and you would basically, the intent is for you to go into that server and grief it. So, you know, a lot of people would frown on that, but that's also a style of playing. You know, rip. You should have used a whitelist. Should have had a password. Sorry. But, and then if you use Server Finder to find vulnerable servers, you're going to have like a massive list here to choose from. So you would use cleanup to remove all the servers that Wurst has found for you. You can also use it to clean up, you know, servers that you don't play on anymore. So that's worth exploring for some people, I assume. There's also a last server button up here at the top, which allows you to just join the last server that you were a part of. And then if you happen to get kicked, for instance, as soon as I get kicked, it will auto reconnect me. So I can get kicked over and over, and it'll just put me right back in the server. So that's pretty cool. There's also, whoa, this is just a little quirk. If you happen to have timer enabled when you leave the world, timer is still technically enabled, which makes the panorama of the title screen dizzyingly fast. Super cool. If you accidentally have stuff enabled that is causing you to get kicked every single time you leave, or every time you try to join a server, just go into a single player world and disable this stuff. Particularly nuker and timer are the two offending hacks that are getting me kicked. So that's the workaround. If you need a place to toggle which hacks are on and off, just join a world where you're not going to get kicked, which is a single player world. So from here, I want to talk about all of the other ones that I didn't talk about here. A big reason I wanted to make this video is because like I said, I use the same basically 4 hacks all the time, and there's so many, there's hundreds of them here. So I wanted to become more familiar with these hacks, and that's what we're going to do here. Me and a buddy of mine, Dart, we're going to walk through all of these lesser known hacks. So again, it's worth it to drop down all of these configuration menus to see what kind of customization options you have. And I will also say that if any of these have more to do with PvP and combat, specifically against other players, I won't focus on it because that's not really my play style. I'll also say I did order these into categories that make sense to mention them in that order. So I'm not going to go through alphabetically. I am going to go through starting with the ones that I think we should talk about first, and then I'm going to talk about ones that are aesthetic only, so they don't really do anything necessarily. They don't have a pragmatic purpose. It just changes something about your UI or the way that you appear to other people. That's it. I'm going to move on to movement after that. After that will be adventure automation. So this is going to be stuff that is particularly useful in survival. Then I'm going to hit building hacks. Then I'm going to go on to adventure utility hacks, which is different from survival in that this doesn't have to do with your gameplay necessarily. It has to do with you exploring the world. So the adventure automation category is more for things that affect you as a player and your character, and the adventure utility is more for things that affect how the world is rendered to you. And then I'll go on to utility, which has more to do with blocking things that other people are doing or making things more apparent to you, but it doesn't really have anything to do with playing Minecraft necessarily. I'll hit the combat ones really quickly, and then after that I'm going to go into some real anarchy stuff. which is there's just a few of them that you you basically wouldn't use these unless you had a nefarious reason to do so. So let's get started. So the very first one that I want to talk about is keybinds. Now, if you go to each one of these, you can also customize your keybinds. But if you want to see all of them in one place, you can type keybinds in the navigator here, which again is right shift, and it'll show all of the Wurst specific keybinds. Now that won't include the ones that have to do with gameplay and mods that show up in your regular keybinds menu, but it will consolidate all of your Wurst keybinds into one area, which can be really helpful. There's also a profiles button up here so that you can create a new profile, and then you could import that into your client on another computer, for instance. Another one is called the hack list. We've talked about this a little bit, and basically this is just the list of hacks that show up either on the right side or left side, depending how you have it customized. Disable Wurst and Panic are two pretty similar ones. Panic is if you want to, basically like if you're playing on a server and you feel like an admin is watching you in that moment, you might keybind Panic to something in order to shut off all of your hacks at once. Disable Wurst is similar, except I'm pretty sure the use case is that you would use Disable Wurst basically if you're not going to want to turn it back on until you're in a different world, for instance. So you might have a survival world that you're playing with all of your mods, but you don't want Wurst to be stepping on your toes. You would just disable Wurst and then enable it when you're ready to use it again in a different world. The click GUI is similar to the tab GUI in that it's a smaller version of the navigator that's broken up into categories. So basically you have the fully verbose section here, which is the navigator. I don't know if this is vanilla, but if you hit right control, it brings up my click GUI, which you can see is still comprehensive, but things are smaller and more consolidated, and therefore you have less options. It's less verbose. It can't go into detail as well. And then finally you have the tab GUI, which is this tiny thing up here that allows you to quickly toggle hacks on and off, but there's no customization options there. So just choose whichever one you like best. This next one is called Item Generator, and it's going to be quickly apparent what this one does. So I have this server set so that it will not all of these items are basically despawning as soon as I throw them. Normally that would not happen, but it's just taking any old random item basically once a tick, and it's just launching something out of my inventory. So that's pretty OP. Next one is derp. So that's what derp looks like. Head roll is similar. We got LSD, which Dart can't see, but I can. So, if in case you're curious, this is exactly what it's like when you take LSD. Very accurate. Then we've got the Miley Cyrus, which makes you twerk. Fantastic. That's a good one to know. No background. So when I go into my inventory, you can see there's like a slight black overlay over the rest of the world, except for my inventory. But if you turn on no background, this is what it looks like. So the rest of the world is still there the way you would normally see it, only you are active inside of your inventory. And it does the same thing with chests and crafting menus, like a crafting table, etc. No fog. If I zoom in, you can see there's basically the opposite of the black overlay. There's a white overlay on everything that is outside of a certain radius from me. And if we go into FreeCam, that's basically how they pull off the illusion of making things look farther away, as well as fading into nothingness, because if you look beyond the horizon, you know, there's nothing to render in. So this is kind of, the fog is a technical workaround that allows the world to just fade into nothingness rather than just getting cut off. But if we turn on no fog, we can see it removes that white overlay. There's no gradation into nothingness. So this is what skin derp looks like. You've actually got layers to your Minecraft skin, and so skin derp will basically just toggle those on and off. And then if I turn on tired, that's what this one looks like. And this is supposed to emulate what the creator of Wurst looked like around, I think, 2016 or 17 or something like that. Tired. So those are all the hacks that are basically just visible to other people and are just aesthetic purposes only. We've got some movement hacks though. So as I turn on bunny hop, what this one does is it will cause me to automatically jump whenever I sprint. We've got creative flight, which is the exact same as using creative flight, which has this ramping effect where you slow down from the speed you're going rather than stopping immediately. And I think the only reason you would use this is so that you don't have to double tap your spacebar, for instance, or if you're in a survival world, you might prefer creative flight over regular flight. There is a hack called extra elytra that apparently makes the elytra easier to use. I've never used this one. In order to use extra elytra, you need to open the config screen, and then this is the aspects that it will change. So essentially what this does is makes the flying of elytra easier in a couple different ways. And we've got fast ladder. So as I put these ladders down, you can see how fast I would normally move on those, but when we turn fast ladder on, go back to the bottom here, and by the way, I just used timer to quickly get to the bottom. So as fast as I normally would be moving, I can turn timer on, boom, I'm already at the bottom. So now that I've got fast ladder on, this is how fast I can traverse ladders, which is pretty cool. Next is fish, and basically what fish does is it allows you to get in the water, and whatever level you're at, you won't sink and you won't float. So you can kind of just walk around in the water in the same way that you would walk around in the air if you're flying in creative. High jump. This basically allows you to jump extra high, you can already see. So I'm jumping about 4 or 5 times high as I normally would. Jetpack is kind of like a double jump. So we jump once, and then we can hold space down, and it's kind of like Diddy Kong in Donkey Kong 64. Booyah, I just need my peanut shooters. Parkour will force you to jump the moment you hit the edge of a block. So this can be good for parkour runs or like run and jumps. So I'm not hitting the space bar at all. It's just as soon as I reach the edge, it's jumping for me. So that's pretty cool. Spider. When I turn spider on, what this does, it allows me to traverse vertical walls the same way that a spider does in Minecraft. So once I walk up to this, look at that. How insane. And step is pretty similar, only you can't walk up vertical walls, but you can walk up one block. So without needing to actually jump, you can just walk over these as if they were steps. So this is scaffold walk. It's pretty self-explanatory. If you have a placeable block in your hand, you just keep walking. And that's it. Much faster. And then this next category is basically the things that you would use to make your gameplay easier. So auto drop is a good one. You can add certain items to this list, and every time that you pick it up, you will automatically drop it. You'll toss it out of your inventory. Auto farm will automatically walk past completed crops and farm them for you. This one works well with till aura. So if I have a hoe in my inventory, I have it selected, it's just going to till around me. It's a little buggy, you can see. It's unpredictable where it's going to till. Auto farm is for completed crops. So once these actually grew up, we would be able to just walk through this and it would automatically grab everything that's ready. And this diamond overlay that you see right here is related to auto farm. So I believe this also shows you the progress of your crops. Auto fish. Once you turn auto fish on, basically it's going to just keep casting your line out. And if you're at a body of water, as soon as a fish bites, it will yank the rod back and it will drop the item at your feet and then cast the line again. So this is important to know because if you're, for instance, like standing up here, well away, it might drop the item like right here or even down here. So it's important to test this and make sure that it is actually making it into your inventory when you get a successful catch. There's also auto respawn, which is similar to auto reconnect, but every time that you die, instead of saying you have died, you were killed by a creeper, you died in lava, it will just spawn you right back into the world. Auto sign is one that I've discovered a little more recently that I like. Basically what this does is you place a single sign with auto sign on, you type your message, and then as soon as you place it again, it automatically inputs your text. So obviously this one can also be pretty annoying. A lot of these can be used to annoy people. That's kind of the point of many of these hacks. But this one's also, pretty cool. Like if I'm on a server and I want to write Ladder Alice was here and today's date, I just do it one time and then I can throw that all kinds of different places without having to retype. This can also be helpful if you, like, for instance, want to put characters from another language. So like Cyrillic alphabet, if you wanted to write something in Russian or you can also put Japanese, kanji, or Chinese characters. You can just copy and paste it into the field where you would normally edit your sign, and from there you would just place another sign and it would automatically put that text on the sign. There is also auto soup, which is similar to auto eat, but it just uses soup. There's auto sprint, so that every time you start walking, you actually start sprinting. No holding down control. There is auto steal. It's similar to pressing the steal button when you access a chest, only the moment that you open the chest, it will begin stealing and try to put those things in your inventory if possible. Auto swim is helpful when you are just hopping in the water. So normally you would see you'd just be floating or dropping, and then you would be walking through the water. But if you wanted to swim, you would need to sprint, and it would transition you into this animation. When you have auto swim on, you just start moving forward, and you're automatically swimming. Going along with the farming stuff we were doing up here, there's also a bone meal aura. So if you have bone meal selected in your hotbar, then as you walk past this, it will automatically bone meal all of these things. So any of these hacks that end with aura, that means that it's constantly checking around you for something. So look, as soon as I get within reach, it's all done. So feed aura would do the same thing. If you're in a cow pen and you have feed aura on, it would check all around you for cows that have not been fed yet, or pigs or whatever. And now we can move on to the building hacks. So a really great one here is called air place. Basically you can see it's selecting an air block for me, and it will replace that air block with whatever I'm holding. So you can place things in the air, which is fantastic. I love using this one. We've also got tunneler, which is kind of like nuker, only it's a lot more controlled. So if I've got tunneler turned on, this one actually is a pathfinding bot that's a little more robust than just the auto walk. So you can see it's placing blocks beneath my feet as well. And this is all happening in real time. Like this that I'm showing you, this is with timer on. So next we've got auto build, which is used in conjunction with the template tool. So we can't do anything with auto build until we know how the template tool works. So we're going to turn on the template tool. So basically what the template tool does is when we enable it, it says start, select start position. So we need to pick what we're going to make into a template. So let's just do like this birch tree. So there's our first position, and here's our second position. Here is the origin, birch tree. Okay, and then we go to auto build, and we make sure that the correct JSON file is chosen here, which should be birchtree.json or penis.json if that's what you're looking for. And the moment that we place a block, okay, well, I don't know exactly why it's not working. I have gotten this to work before, but essentially what's supposed to happen is you make a template and then you can just place it, and that your template should show up. Normally I would just use something like Lightmatica for this. it's so much cleaner. But if all you have to work with is Wurst, then auto build might be a good idea. We've also got auto switch, which you can see is just toggling between every item in my hotbar. So the way that we might want to use this is we can add all kinds of random blocks here, and as it is cycling through all of those, you can just place them, right? Just hold down the right mouse button. So that's pretty cool. And then we've got build random, which is similar, only you don't need to manually place anything. It's just going to place blocks around you. We've also got instant bunker, which when you enable it will build a bunker with whatever block you're holding. But you'll see it typically makes a box around you immediately. It might be that I'm on a server. It doesn't like that I'm trying to modify these 57 blocks at a time, at one single time. But it makes a bunker around you, which can be really helpful if, you know, you have absolutely nothing except 57 dirt blocks. It can also be helpful, like if a person on 2B2T is coming to harm you, you could use this to build a bunker of like obsidian around yourself. We've got Kaboom, which you can see basically just simulates like a creeper explosion. Again, it does not like when I do it. We've got liquids, which is essentially like airplace, except the way that this works is that even when I'm targeting like this block down here, it will still place it just right on top of the fluid, right on top of the liquid. Reach can be another handy one. It's one specific use, which is, okay, this is normally as high as we can go. If we turn on reach, you can go one higher than that. So that's cool. Restock is really helpful. So if I'm in survival mode and every time I use one of these blocks, it actually decrements it. You can see it goes 58, 57, 56, 55, right? What restock does is it will take more blocks of that type from your inventory and try to keep this stack full. And one thing that we need to do is tell it which items to do this for. So if I do birch planks, okay, now so whenever I place birch plank, it's automatically going to make this stack 64 as long as I have the planks to restock. That's why it's called restock. Base finder, you can see this is showing me every man-made block, which I don't know how this is defined, but essentially if you were flying overhead and you were under the impression that nobody has ever lived here, and then you have base finder on, it'll show you all of the blocks that were manually placed there. So that can be good if, you know, if I was a player living here and I put just a bunch of sand up here to try and hide the fact that my base is alive and well down here. We're trying to make this up here discrete. Base finder would help you by showing you all of that sand was actually placed there by a player. It was not generated in somehow. We've also got tree bot, which is kind of buggy, but it does its job. It looks for wood around, and we'll go grab it. It looks for logs specifically, I believe. We've got vein miner, which is a vein is essentially just any spot that you see, you know, like more than 6 iron ore in a chunk or copper. The vein miner, I believe, will just mine all of them either sequentially, you know, automatically, or it's possible that it tries to break them all at once. We've also got boat fly, which can be really handy for transporting villagers. So if or any kind of entity. So if I have my favorite acacia boat, and I go find something that I want to take home, like this pig, then once we get the pig in the boat, which once we get this cow in the boat, okay. Listen, everybody. So once we get the pig in the boat, somebody just get in a boat. Now that we have a cow in a boat, once we have boat fly on, we can use this in a super unorthodox way and actually lift the boat up. Sweet. So I could take this home with me. And you could do this with villagers. It's good to know that if you land this somewhere, sometimes they will take fall damage. So this is a pretty helpful hack. But sometimes if you're like working on a big, you know, like a iron golem farm and you need villagers, it pays to know that even though this is a lot quicker for transporting them, sometimes when you land the boat, the villager will actually take fall damage and die. We've also got Cave Finder, which it's not highlighting every single open area underground. What it's highlighting is abandoned mine shafts, as well as spawner rooms. There was one of those, actually a couple of those nearby. But you would also see those on this overlay. Now, this is a little different from others because you cannot see it when it's obfuscated. And obfuscation in this context means that there is some other block in front of it. So a lot of times, like if you go to search and you search for, let's say amethyst, an amethyst block is what we're searching for. And then if we have search on, so I'm not sure why, but usually you would be able to see these even when they're obfuscated. So essentially you would be able to see like a holograph of it even through these solid blocks. For some reason it's not doing that. I don't know if that's a new, I wouldn't think that that's a new implementation because that feels way less helpful. But yeah, for whatever reason, I don't know, maybe it's conflicting with another mod that I've got, I'm not sure. But let's go to Dolphin. Dolphin is helpful because it will automatically bring you to the surface. It will not let you sink. So this is a good one for if you are using auto walk in Wurst. It'll keep you on top of the water instead of allowing you to sink while you're walking. This next one is called Glide. So basically, instead of the normal velocity that you have when your character is falling, Glide will cause you to essentially fall like if you have had the levitation effect, I think. So basically, instead of falling rapidly towards the ground, it allows you to just glide. It looks like you're moving slowly, but the moment you touch the ground, all of that height difference registers, and you take a massive amount of fall damage. So that's a good reason why you would want no fall, both for glide and flight, and just in general. If you're not being very strict with yourself about vanilla gameplay, then no fall is a great one to just have on all the time. We've also got health tags. So as I look at Dart here, he's got a health of 20. We've also got INV walk, which is short for inventory walk. Basically, typically when you open up your inventory, your character stops moving. But with INV walk on, you can continue to use your inventory and walk at the same time. So as I open that, I can keep running, jumping, whatever. I could drag items around. Name tags. So basically what name tags does, say we have it off, as we get farther away from Dart, you can see that his name disappears. It scales down until it just disappears. With name tags on, this can be really helpful for working on a campus with somebody, because their name will remain basically the same size until they disappear. So if I am, looking for Dart, it can be a lot easier to see that way. New chunks is one that is a little difficult to use, but this is an OG hack for playing on 2B2T. So if this is a new chunk, if no one's ever been in this chunk before, it's outlined in red. If it is a chunk that is being rendered, but somebody's already been there before, I have it in yellow. And this can be good for finding bases. So like if I was on 2B2T and I was able to follow a path, say that there's a ton of yellow on the right side of me, there's a ton of yellow on the left side of me, but there's a path of red, well, it's likely that that leads to a base, or, in unfortunate scenarios, it just leads to a portal somewhere, and then you lose the trail. But yeah, this can be a helpful one, and I think in past versions it tended to be a lot more reliable. You can see only some of them are rendering in, so I don't know that it's really something that you would use nowadays. We've got no fire overlay. What no fire overlay does, you can see when you're standing in lava or when you get burnt somehow, there's this overlay of fire, and if we want to disable that, we turn on no fire overlay. We can do the same thing with no hurt cam. We can do no overlay like this, which is for water and fire. We've got a no pumpkin overlay, which removes the pumpkin overlay that shows up. Those are all the ones that affect the overlays in game. I believe there's also maybe a no portal, so that it doesn't do that weird distortion effect whenever you're standing in or near a portal. So we've also got no levitation, which prevents the levitation effect when you get hit by a shulker spitball or whatever it's called. There's no slowdown, which prevents the slowdown from walking on honey and soul sand. And then also if you're walking and then all of a sudden you need to start eating, it would typically slow you down. No slowdown will prevent that as well, so you can eat while you're running at full speed. Pretty dope. No web will prevent the web effect. Portal GUI allows you to use a inventory while you're inside of a portal waiting to teleport. So you could go into your inventory and mess with things while you're being teleported. Potion Saver would be a good one. I don't use potions that often. So basically, if you have an effect that you've been given from drinking a potion, if you have Potion Saver on, when you're not moving, this won't decrement. So the timer won't go down if you're not moving. It only goes down while you're moving. So that's cool. That one's called Potion Saver. We've got Protect. When you click that, basically it finds the nearest entity and protects it. So if anything were to, like if it were to be approached by a mob of some kind, this bot would automatically protect this entity. And if there's nothing to protect it from, we just follow it. So that's cool. We've also got the radar mini-map, which is alright. Definitely better than nothing, but I would usually have a dedicated mod for this. We've got the search. For whatever reason, it wasn't showing it earlier, but now you can see all of the amethyst blocks are showing up even when they're obfuscated from view. So that's the handy part of the search hack. We've also got sneak, which just keeps you sneaking 100% of the time. We've got snowshoe that allows you to walk without leather boots on deep snow. We've got throw, which would be used with something like a snowball. Throw essentially replicates the action that you take when you throw a snowball, but it can be used with other items as well. I'm not exactly sure where this is useful, but I know that's what it's used for. Auto Librarian is for automatically assigning a librarian to a particular enchantment, I believe. I've never used this one, but that sounds OP. We've also got anti-AFK. So basically what anti-AFK does is it just makes you take actions so that a server won't think that you're not there and kick you. So like on 2B2T, if you waited like, 14 hours to join the game or whatever, if you're not paying for priority, you would want your character to continue moving around and doing things so that you don't get disconnected for being AFK. That's where you would use anti-AFK. We've got anti-spam, which when you turn it on, it'll basically count the number of times a particular person says a certain thing, and if they go above a certain threshold, it will ignore them, I believe. Autocomplete uses the OpenAI API to automatically fill in, like automatically suggest items for typing, but you would need an API key, which I'm not going to bother setting that up. We've also got too many hacks, which allows you to add certain hacks that you don't want. So like for instance, if you wanted to make sure that Miley Cyrus never got activated, you could add Miley Cyrus to the too many hacks list. And I believe that's for discretion purposes. So if there was an admin watching you and you wanted to make sure that you didn't accidentally enable something, that's when you might use that. Camera distance is a really good one. This is for when you go into third person. It just allows you to change where this actually is. So I like to do something like this too sometimes. It's a little weird, but it can be kind of a interesting style. This is another place where you would want to put camera no clip. So now that I don't have now that I have camera no clip on, it doesn't launch my camera to the back of me whenever I'm near a tree. We've got chat translator whenever somebody speaks or whenever you speak. It'll translate for you. I like that one. We've got InfiniChat, which basically just removes the character limit down here so that you can edit NBT data. We've got Name Protect, which it says hides all player names. I assume that just means that if I were to go to Dart, yeah, it does not show me his actual name. It just shows player 1. So this could be good for, you know, if we're playing on like 2B2T and we're uploading videos, and we don't want people to know like what who our team is made up of, who our faction is made up of. We've got a no weather hack, which just removes the weather overlay and all of the lighting considerations it makes. I assume that everything looks exactly the same for Dart, but for me you can see that there's no more rain. We've got remote view, which is used like this, .rv fcs Dart. So now I am seeing the world through Dart's eyes, and you can see me, or rather I can see me through Dart's eyes, but I'm not controlling this. This is me seeing what he is seeing. And you can also use this for like cows, creepers, villagers, whatever. And that one's called remote view. We've also got speed hack, which I believe is just an older version of timer, only it's stuck on 2.5 times. You can't adjust it from 1 to 20 or whatever. And by the way, if you go into timer, you can go below 1, so you could go into slow motion. And then if I go into timer and I set this to 0.5 and then I enable it, let's do 0.1. You can see all of the raindrops falling slowly. It's a super cool effect. And my movement speed is also affected. So one of the things that you might not like about it though is that it also affects, like this is affecting the entire game processing. So if I go V to change my view, or F5 as it would normally be, you can see it also lags a little bit. So just something to know. Turn it back off. I'm only going to hit one combat hack because most of these are really self-explanatory, and so the one that I want to show is called aimbot, bow aimbot, and when I pull my arrow back, it aims at Dart, and as long as he doesn't move, it'll hit him every time. Sorry, rip. Let me find something else to kill. And it'll also lock on to anything that's near you. Boom. Chicken. Boom. Chicken. It'll also lock on to, maybe that's a fish. But it could also be locking on to like a skeleton down here or something. So a little buggy or a little glitchy, you know, like that's the intended purpose, but maybe it would work better if there was functionality to not lock onto things that are obfuscated, but it's whatever. Who cares? There's also some good ones like auto armor, like as soon as your armor breaks, it'll replace it with a fresh set. There's anti-cactus, which prevents you from getting hurt by cacti. And then one thing that I guess is probably important to note, because this is a very useful and very often used hack, it's called kill aura. So just like till aura, basically just scanned around me for areas that could be tilled. Kill aura will scan around me for anything that can take damage. So this is something that you don't necessarily want to have on all the time. You might want to filter players. You might want to filter passive mobs. You might want to filter like iron golems, because if you have this on and you walk into a village, you punch an iron golem, like it's not going to last very long for you. So this one is important to mention because it is typically keybound to K by default. So it is really easy to accidentally turn it on and you have no idea what's happening. People around you are taking damage. You hear the damage sound, so it sounds like you're taking damage. It can be disorienting. That's basically it. There's a couple more, just like 3 more that I want to mention. These are not pragmatic, these are not practical. This is basically just for ruining people's day. You've got Crash Chest, which generates a chest that bans people from the server if they have too many copies of it. Gives you a chest right here, copy me. And then if you placed that chest, and then you placed that chest inside of that chest, anybody who opens this chest would get kicked from the server and potentially banned as well. So that's really fun. We've also got Force OP. I don't know how well this works. So like right now I am in, it's actually op, it's not OP, Force op. So I am an operator or an op of this server, which means if I want to, I can change my own game mode to creative. I could change Dart's game mode to survival. I can do all kinds of stuff. I can do fill commands, etc. I can do all kinds of stuff because the server is under the assumption that I am an admin, and it's okay for me to do those things. If you use Force Op, that gives you operator privileges and allows you to do certain things, even if you're not the admin. So, finally, mass TPA. A TPA is teleport all, which from what I understand, would teleport every entity that exists in your render distance to you, which again would ruin your day. So if you do a TPA, or if you do the mass TPA, it would send a request to everybody, and then as soon as someone accepts it, it would teleport all entities to that player, which would wreak havoc. That's the way that I understand mass TPA. And that's basically it. With all of this functionality, you basically become a god in your Minecraft world. So give a lot of this shit a try responsibly and have some fun.